All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you to United States Green Building Council LA chapter and Ben, Fernanda, and the whole team for inviting us out to MGBCE to give you guys an idea of what Theodore Payne and its partners have been working on for the past several years. So my name is Tim Becker. I'm Director of Horticulture at Theodore Payne Foundation. And with me is, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
I'm Anne-Marie Benz with California Native Plant Society.
Hello, and I'm Emerson Funes. I will be teaching the Spanish course for the credentials program with Theodore Payne.
Cool. So in the title, it's pretty straightforward what we're trying to achieve with this curriculum, at least on a pilot scale, is we're really looking to train landscapers for a future of drought-tolerant landscaping, and specifically to native plant landscaping. So our curriculum, and just a little bit about Theodore Payne Foundation, sorry, before I get into the curriculum, if no one is familiar with us. This is actually our 60th anniversary, 2020, so we also had big plans for 2020, which got altered just slightly to some degree. But Theodore Payne inspires and educates Southern Californians about the beauty and ecological benefits of native plant landscapes, and we're really quite a diverse organization. We have a nursery, which is both serves residential as well as commercial clients. We had a seed conservation seed bank and store demonstration gardens, 22-acre site in Sun Valley, California. And we provide a range of professional K-12 and adult educational services, which this falls under that category, our kind of outreach into the professional realm of landscapers. And we do a lot of community outreach, and probably many of you are familiar with our garden tour, which we put on every spring, and also had to make it virtual this year. But you can find more about our organization at theodorepayne.org, as well as finding out more about our partners. First of all, USGBC, who's partnering on this grant with us, as well as California Native Plant Society, who is also really instrumental in helping us develop this curriculum, and also is in the process of developing a lot of other resources for professionals, which I think, Anne-Marie, if you'd like just to touch on some of the programs that CNPS is working on right now, that would be great.
Well, thank you. I'm the Horticulture Outreach Manager for California Native Plant Society. So working with California native plants in the built environment. We also have divisions that work in the wildlands and in natural environments. But we are working with Theodore Payne, USGBC, and LADWP on this program, as well as working with Metropolitan Water District, Molten Miguel, and some others on developing a native plant training for nurseries. We're going to be helping nurseries learn best ways to purchase, market, care for, sell native plants. We are working on lists of appropriate native plants throughout the state that'll make it easier for people to help people choose the right plant for the right place. And our best tool for doing that is Calscape. If you haven't been to Calscape, it's an online resource of plants where you can put in your address. You can even go in and put in a bunch of factors about the site, and it will give you the types of plants that are native to that area, the ones that will grow the best without as much maintenance, without as much water needs, and will give most any look that you want. We're also working on an add-on to it that will, in addition to putting in your soil and site and sun conditions, you'll be able to add in what kind of look your client may want, and it will give you some options for the type of look that you might want, the appropriate plants for that. So keep a look at Calscape for that, and we're really excited about this program.
Yeah, and our partners really bring the experience. As I said, Theodore Payne has an institutional history of working with California native plants. Theodore Payne himself introduced over 400 species of native plants into the trade, and we carried on his legacy in 1960 when we started, as well as the decades of experience and expertise coming from CMPS, who has more of a statewide impact, as well as the enthusiasm, both of our instructors, Emerson, as well as Claire Acosta, who's our English instructor. We have, a really supportive network of partners, and one of the most important of which is the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, who through their community grants partnership made this program possible. So really this program is looking at increasing sustainability, conservation efficiency in their service district, while also engaging a less than served community of landscape professionals who could benefit both from a health point standpoint and from a health standpoint, as well as from an income standpoint. So we're really excited to have the support from LADWP as well as our other partners. So just to look at the state of the industry right now in terms of native plant horticulture and landscaping overall. And I think we can all see the trends with climate change, the impact that high water plants have on our environment. Native and drought tolerant plants are definitively going to be the future of Southern California landscapes. And the real question is that, do we have a workforce that is prepared and paid enough to take care of these widespread or these various landscapes that are going to be extremely prevalent in this new future of Southern California? And really begs the question is that, are we going to be able to sustain them to the point where people want to adopt them on a regular basis, in particular choosing native plant material over non-native plant material, which has more ecological benefits to our area, other outside of just the water conservation? And I think for us, looking at this problem, both like adoption of native plants and are we prepared to care for them, it's really kind of the issue is rooted in several causes, which we're hoping our curriculum will help alleviate through proper training and resource sharing. Really, it's about giving people the resources to be able to make sound maintenance decisions. But it really comes down to oftentimes designer maintenance issues, right? Is it overplanted? Is the wrong plant selected? Is it poorly timed pruning or an overwatered garden? Now, these are all traditional causes, not only in residential landscape gardens, which Theodore Payne consults on a daily basis. It's common in commercial landscapes. And really it's about horticulture, right? Is our horticultural considerations being included in the design and development of landscapes from the residential to the commercial? And that's really, basically we produce this negative feedback loop where there's a problem started early on in the story of a landscape from these root causes, and you get the common results of those issues. You have plant die-off, you have poor plant performance, you have higher cost for plant replacement and changing things, resulting in, landscapes failing to thrive, and you have unhappy climates. And then we have a return to conventional landscapes, plants that work, given the kind of maintenance regimes that people are traditionally implementing, which again, this is the paradigm shift. We have to change these issues from the get-go. And, overplanting, I think many actors share in the responsibility for how a landscape performs. And a lot of times it does come down to the design. I mean, in this image, you can't even see the delineation between Enseleia californica and the Salvia clevelandii, both of which have been hedged to form like a dense screen at the wrong time of year. And this is a problem that we see on a regular basis. And it's a problem that maintenance professionals can actually address through their activities, but it's about doing it early and identifying those problems early. And a lack of this information easily accessible to landscape professionals, again, are leading to these common issues. You have in this picture to the left, a Ceanothus Yankee point, which is a 10 to 12 foot wide ground cover that is planted in a 3 foot wide parkway, hell strip. What else do we want to call those places where it's super hard to garden? But so from the outset, this is the wrong plant to put in this place. Now, if you consulted with a native plant professional, they would have led you to a better plant selection in the first place. But, it'd also be on the onus of landscape professional to change that as early as possible. So it's not 5 years down the road and this plant is getting hacked because it's too big for its space. And then poorly pruned shrubs, it's just simple. Something as simple as Salvia apiana needs to have its flower stalks thinned, not reduced. And this is, maintenance lingo, but these are the simple tools and examples of plant care that our program gives professionals to really make sure that installations succeed in the long run. And our native plant garden tour and the exemplary native plants that you see in public landscapes done by firms who know what they're doing really demonstrate that native plants can truly fit any aesthetic that you have or that your client has. From the conventional sense of beauty, we have swaths of carex, which can take longer periods of dry out than traditional lawns, and ground cover buckwheat, which are evergreen shrubs with a small application of summer water, deliberately delivered in specific regimes. And you can go the full opposite end of the spectrum to the crazy assemblage of our state's rare plants. And for people who aren't familiar, California is a biological hotspot, one of 32 biodiversity hotspot, one of 32 on the globe. So a lot of the customers that come to Theodore Payne are really into celebrating our sense of place in California. And I think having a lot of the rare plants in their gardens is a way for them to kind of create that sense of place. And that's kind of one of the main philosophical reasons why we're trying to promote native plants on a broader municipal commercial level landscape, is to really start to develop a aesthetic that speaks to where we're from, which is this amazing biologically diverse, unique place with a rate of endemism about 30%, meaning these plants only grow here, wherever their small range in California is. That's something to celebrate. And our garden tour, if you haven't checked out, you really should, because it does demonstrate what you can do with native plants. And then, so how do we kind of address those root problems to get to the landscape transformation that everyone can envision? But I think there's some roadblocks to get there. And this program is a part of the story of how we get there, a part of the process of kind of unlearning some traditional practices and learning some new ones that will help us succeed with this new landscape. So the CNPLC, California Native Plant Landscape Curriculum, is a 9-part series. In the introduction, we kind of go into what you're going to study, how you're going to benefit, and really what the first 4 years of a garden looks like. Because, in the built environment, I don't know, I was thinking about this other day as I was looking at a development project. The physical hard structures, the buildings, the roads, those typically stay in pretty good shape for the 5 years, and you don't really need to do a lot of maintenance because everything's brand new. With a garden, the first 5 years are the most critical, where you want to be tending and tip pruning and pinching and making sure you're doing the perfect irrigation and having a hand in everything, so that it will succeed and last for the 5 to 50 years where you don't want to have to do a lot of changes. So kind of looking at those first 4 years are really critical for a landscape professional and how to cultivate the garden to long-term success. We go into then plant identification. Obviously, you can't take care of something if you don't know what it is in the first place. Now, with 6,000 native plants, plus about 4,000 cultivars of native plants, plus the thousands of non-native Mediterranean drought-tolerant plants, we can only really, let's get into the top 25 that we see in native plant horticulture. And we do this through just evaluating sales data, finding out what the most common plants are in the commercial trade, the most common ones people are going to see on a day-to-day basis when they come into a native plant garden. We also share with you our native plant flashcards, which was a collaboration with a lot of different organizations, and is a really cool sweet deck of cards that if you sign up for this curriculum, you get a free package. They're also available for sale on our website, small promo. And that has 80 plants with their cultural needs, which is a really good resource for designers. We go into soils because obviously plants live in the soil. So understanding soils, and both in terms of plant selection for landscapes that need updated plantings, and to diagnosing issues related to root pathogen or soil-borne pathogens, or how to irrigate. Irrigation is completely dependent on soil type. So understanding soils is going to be really critical. Then we get into really the most probably important aspect of training individuals, and that's how to irrigate them. And that's why LADWP was really interested in partnering with us, because proper irrigation not only helps conserve water, but helps makes landscapes thrive. And I think irrigation is where every irrigation class I've ever taught at Theodore Payne is 100% booked, because people are desperate to know how to water plants accurately and efficiently, and to keep them living. So it's something that we have a lot of experience with. And so our first part of irrigation really goes into the how, the when, the where, and how much. And then our next slide, I believe one of my partners here is going to go into the next 4 elements of our curriculum.
And we go through all the basics there of the pieces that you need to build onto getting into the final pieces of irrigation, to looking at, the longer term plans, smart controllers, how do you set up a full system, what are the rebates that are available through LADWP, which is always a benefit to your clients, and then IPM. We've all dealt with IPM that we never want to deal with again. We might as well start with letting everybody know the best routes in to begin with. And then go into the maintenance pieces of pruning versus shearing, or pruning versus, all the ways that people have often been taught to cut. How do you truly care for a plant in a way that is going to encourage it to grow healthy and strong and in its native form, while keeping all the requirements for living in an urbanized space, keeping it out of the walkway and off of the window and those pieces. How do we best work with the plant for what it needs in order to be healthy and strong, as opposed to shearing it into a nice, ball shape, or squared off hedges because the wrong plant has been planted in that place. How do we go in and do a garden assessment? How do you really go into a garden that's there and take a look at what's already there? What does it need? What would thrive? How do you look at the garden and really come up with a plan that's healthy for the garden and good for the client as well, and convey that information to them?
And then we'll follow up with this last slide, Emerson.
All right, and then putting it all to work. That would be the most fun part of it, putting it all to work. This will be like the estimate that the client would get, and how much it's gonna cost, and then in workshop 1, we're gonna talk about irrigation, the equipment, and implementation review. Workshop 2 is pruning, practice and procedures. This is one of the most hardest things that I found when I was younger, when I started working with native plants, because there are some plants that are required to be pruned in a certain period of time, in a certain month of the year. So you need to prune it on the right time. And the last one is a certificate of implementation. The leverage of your certificate, like what you can do with it. With this certificate, you can actually open a lot of doors. You can, whenever you go to apply for a job, you can show them that you're a native plant certified landscaper, and this would give you more of opportunity to get the job. Not just that, but also maybe get paid a little more. And not just that, but the knowledge that you're gonna have, it's very important for the future of landscaping.
Thank you, Emerson. And, you know, we deal again with the public a lot, from the residential landscapers to professional designers or architects or contractors, whoever it may be. And one thing we find is that there's a varied gateway to native gardens or drought tolerant landscapes. For a lot of people, it's purely about creating habitat in urban spaces, which you immediately do when you take away a lawn, put down mulch, and put a few native plants in. It happens instantaneously. And it can become extremely nuanced when you're trying to create habitat for very specific species that have obligate host plants. And you're really trying to cultivate something kind of beyond a landscape just purely for the aesthetic. And we commend the people who do that and want to enable the landscape practitioners who are taking care of these gardens to understand where the client is coming from when they're asking them to treat plants a certain way or hold off on doing certain pest control measures. And this is all about teaching people how to learn to meet the new demand or kind of the new expectations from our garden. And we can kind of break these down into some general kind of categories of, yes, beauty. They want year-round aesthetic interest, even if it is all native. And there is definitely a way to get there. But again, you have to know the horticulture to get that 365 days of color, or be able to have a native plant garden look amazing in August, which again, we can show you that that is possible. People want it to support wildlife. They want to see birds and they want to see bees and they want to have life where they live, which is, I think everyone deserves that. It's a human right. People want to capture water and retain it where they are. And this is becoming, this is regulatory at this point, but people also do want to have rainwater capture. And if you're going after the LADWP rebates, you have to do some rain capture as part of your landscape transformation. Obviously, people want it to be efficient, and it's commonly said that native plants do not work with drip, and that goes against my personal experience, and I know that goes against the experience of a lot of professional landscape designers and maintenance folks who know how to use the drip. Yes, drip was designed for agricultural applications, so we have to change our use of that infrastructure, that equipment, to meet the new demand of whatever landscape material we're working with. So just because you have drip doesn't mean you apply it 3 times a week for 10 minutes. That's just a way to cause root rot in most of your native plants. People want edibility, right? And while, California native plants don't often produce a lot of the fruits that our domesticated varieties are going to produce, that's still something we touch on, as it's a critical element of a lot of gardens. And in fact, native plants are a perfect complement to edible gardens, since they provide the habitat for the beneficials that pollinate and take care of your pests. And people want it to be sustainable, right? They want, not only do the clients, but we also believe in the sustainability of the landscape industry. It's underpaid, the maintenance, and a lot of times people are exposed to noise pollution, gas pollution, air pollution, and exposed to toxic chemicals. So this really is a way to kind of diverge away from these traditional kind of conditions of the gardening world, which just doesn't have to be that way. And again, I think this creating urban ecological habitat, and I think the city should be commended, their 90,000 trees initiative and the push to get more trees planted. There needs to be more native trees incorporated, but this is a part of that, getting the understory plants that sustain wildlife as well as these trees, and water conservation. And those are the 2 elements that this curriculum drives home, how to create those 2 things. And again, a lot of our curriculum is how it relates to the LADWP rebates and how to get people familiar with the resources that are out there so that they can take advantage of these incentives, which are significant. Right now for residents is $3 a square foot up to 5,000 square feet. So it can take a significant chunk out of the cost of a project if you have a large enough space. Anyone who has 5,000 square feet of grass, though, that's a lot of grass. So our target audience, and now this is, so we've already put out a survey and had over 100 people who want to take our survey. And while we are hitting kind of the landscape professional world, we're still kind of missing our target demographic right now, which is the Spanish speaking community that does this work on a day-to-day basis. So we are looking at training landscape professionals, specifically ones who engage in maintenance. We have a lot of designers and architects and who want to get in on this, and it's valuable to have this information in their hands. But our target audience is the people who come after the install or after the maintenance contract is over, and now it's just someone who is gardening there on a regular basis. Sole proprietor is ideal for us. Again, people who are, it's just their operation to help them improve their, kind of income. I think the income potential, to increase the income potential is probably greater in the sole proprietor than it would be in the multi-tiered, company who has a larger crew, since the sole proprietor sets their own rates. Again, Spanish speaking and within the LADWP service area. So this is really kind of a community-based program. We're looking really to impact the service area of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And really at the end of the day, it's about helping professionals and homeowners with the transition from thirsty lawns to bountiful gardens, and to do it with very little water. So thank you guys very much. That is it for our PowerPoint presentation. You can use this email if you guys have any questions. I'm also tim@theodorepayne.org if you have very horticulture-based questions. But I'd like to open it up now to Q&A. If there is any questions from the audience. And people are muted, so let's see if I can't get my chat box.
Yeah, so if you type questions into chat, we are glad to answer any questions that come up. Or I don't think we can unmute people, no. All right. Any questions on, oh, here we go. Are there any recommendations for drought tolerant plants in low light areas?
There are many, many, many species of plants that thrive in low light conditions. In fact, we have an entire area of our nursery dedicated to dry shade. So one of the classics is California, is the iris, native to California, Iris douglassiana, or one of the hybrids. And that performs really well, low water situation. It has blankets of huge flowers in late winter, spring. There's also heuchras, or the coral bells. Both of these work really well in large drifts. I'm going to list my 3 favorites, and then maybe we can each talk about our favorite dry shade plants. And then Ribes viburnifolium, if you want something a bit more plant to work with. That's up to 3 feet high. It has arching branches with red-tipped new growth, aromatic foliage, evergreen, endemic and rare to the Santa Cruz Islands and the South Coast. So that's evergreen current, heuchras, and iris.
And a lot of it then depends on where you're located. I'm normally in the coastal redwoods, Northern California. And so we tend to get a lot of ferns growing under the redwoods. We get a variety of flowering things that aren't common down south. And we get some really interesting things like great horsetails that will do really well in spots under the redwoods. So it's a whole different type of ecosystem that we're seeing where we are. How about you, Emerson? Do you have some favorites?
Yeah, I actually have been planting a couple Frangula californica coffee berries. I've been planting them in shade, and they're doing very well. I planted maybe 30 of them about a month ago, and they're looking pretty good. I think pretty soon they're going to be established. And another one that I like, it's ferns. I like ferns in the shade. Uh, I've planted a couple ferns underneath oaks, and they do very well. And then others that I like eucharas, just like Tim does, and irises, and yeah.
We've got a follow-up question on that same one, and then we'll move on to the other question. But can any of those sustain the new downtown LA dog-friendly city, where planters are often getting additional input from dogs?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, you need something that can just take impact of dogs, like walking, and then the urine. It's just, I recommend typically if you're gonna expect that, just put a plant that needs a little bit more, not like a abundance of water, but something that's gonna flush the water like once a week. Like Muhlenbergia origens does really well with like weekly watering, not a huge amount, weekly to every other week. That can take the impact of dog urination, as well as a lot of our other monocots. Like you could do Juncus and Carex mix and just have grassland that can take that hit, or you know, Canyon Wild Rye. Those would be good ones. But you know, a shrub, it depends. You know, probably choose some shrubs that could take that. Dog pee. We have a dog-friendly handout at Theodore Payne. It's like plants that dogs can like, but it's mostly about them. It's mostly the dog foot traffic, because they will just like run through plants. So plants that are more just like durable in the landscape.
Makes sense. And then we've got a question from Adrian for the course. When will it be available? How can they get more information on registering?
So I meant to send that to everyone, but I just sent the link to our website. So theodorepayne.org, go to our Learn and the Landscaper certification, and that's where you'll find the survey, which it's bilingual, so Spanish, English, and a little bit more about it. And in our survey, the time frame and scheduling is dependent on survey responses. So it's 9 courses each, you know, and we were going to do it in person. So when it turned into Zoom, we're like, is 2 hours of Zoom like too much, or it's supposed to be 3 hours? So it's looking like once a week Zoom classes are what people are after. And just so people know too, the workshops are in person, but it's just limited amount of people can attend to keep social distancing measures in place. So we'll be doing the workshops at Theodore Payne Foundation headquarters in Sun Valley. So you can learn how to come garden in the 110-degree heat of the valley. Brutal.
But the firm dates should be before too long, and there will be a class in English and a class in Spanish as well.
Yeah, so if you can't get in on the first session, this is explained, but there are 5 iterations or 5 sessions of the 9-course series. So and we've increased, originally it was 15 people per class, but now we've increased it to 30. So 150 slots during this pilot program supported by LADWP. And then we're going to see where we are at the end of that before we offer more.
Yeah, moving to Zoom, it's all a little bit of adaptive management right now. Any other questions? No? If you do have questions.
There's a question to me that says, how do you deal with ground squirms? I'm guessing you mean squirrels. We installed drip irrigation and now they're being ripped up by ground squirrels. My landscaper wants to switch to spray now. Help. We deal with ground squirrels as well. And I will admit I had a section of drip irrigation, and this is one of the considerations. If you're in an area that's a little bit more wild, you have a little bit more habitat for heavy infestations of animals that will destroy your drip, like ground squirrels or even coyotes when it's thirsty. I had an area here in Sun Valley that I switched over to MP rotators just because the drip was getting so hammered. Ground squirrels are a non-game animal in Los Angeles County, according to the Los Angeles County Agricultural Commissioner. So you can live trap them. What we're missing is fox habitat. So ground squirrels are a native species and have an ecological niche where they burrow and then are kicked out by foxes as well as burrowing owls, which are the first to go when development happens. So we don't have any burrowing owls or foxes to kick out the ground squirrels. So you can see it's like kind of this catch-22 we're in. But yeah, overhead's going to be less vulnerable to rodents like ground squirrels, voles, and especially coyotes who will get it. You can go subterranean on the drip, but you know, there's issues with that too. You can bury it up to 3 inches. So, I mean, your landscaper's not wrong. I mean, that will definitely solve the problem.
And then we've got a question under plants for under oak trees and watering under oak.
Yeah, so main things to avoid with oaks is abundant application of summer water, particularly around the crown. That means like the trunk, so you want to keep the trunk dry all through the summer. So if that means adjusting spray heads so they don't hit the trunk or doing drip so that there's no application, typically say if you can avoid putting any water down within like 10 feet is good. Now you can still start shrubs that might encroach in towards the trunk if you want to have vegetation there. But we talked about dry shade plants earlier. There's a number of plants, and using, if anyone's Calscape has this function as well as Theodore Payne's e-store, so you can filter through the plants that are available on the floor in the nursery by features such as under oaks or dry shade, and just get a filter to get you down to the plants that are compatible with those garden factors or characteristics of the garden conditions, site conditions. But ribes vibrifolium, we already mentioned a few of these, heucheras, coffeeberry for larger size shrubs. A lot of the ribes, all ribes are really understory plants, so those are good. Down here in Southern California, hot, dry conditions. We do have some polypodiums under our oak. They just disappear in the summer and come back every year. So you can do ferns, and you can, if you can find xeric ferns for sale, good luck, but those do really well under oaks, like coffee ferns, if any of you are familiar with those.
Yeah.
I do have a woodwardia near the edge of a canopy of an oak, but it needs a little bit more water than like a coast live oak would be comfortable with. Also, manzanita ground covers and ceanothus ground covers can do well under oaks. And it kind of depends.
Oaks, I have ferns and a lot of sorrel.
Sounds like NorCal.
Yeah, they both do really well depending on where you are, Tommy. And as Tim said, both their site and Calscape have resources that can help you narrow down what type of plant you need depending on the site that you're working with. You know, whether you need lots of water, very low water, lots of sun, low sun, hillside, sandy soils, you know, whatever your combination, you can kind of narrow down a little bit what you're looking for before you go there, before you head over to Theodore Payne to purchase the plants.
And I think what Calscape gives folks too, especially on the landscape contractor, the larger scale, it shows you the wholesale nurseries that carry these plants. Because there's often a misconception that these plants aren't available, but if you know the sources, you can really provide a sufficient nursery stock to meet the project demands in most cases. And so, yeah, that's really convenient. It'll link you straight to the nurseries, and only the ones that have that plant in stock at the time. So that's great for the immediate. If you have a project with quick plant need turnaround, you know, that's really useful.
Any further questions on plants or on the training? I think to get more information on the training when it comes out, they can join your newsletter too, right, Tim?
Absolutely. We have updates via our e-newsletter and our website. So if you go to Theodore Payne, you can sign up for that. Also become a member. And yeah, there will be continual updates as the program is flushed out. Obviously, during COVID times, things are kind of always touch and go. So yeah, hopefully next spring we can deliver 1 or 2 of them in person. That would be ideal. We were going to make it really fun and have like carne asada cookout for every class, and it's going to be a little party every time. Really incentivize it.
The cookout part.
Yeah.
I encourage you to look at and potentially join California Native Plant Society. Also, we have 35 chapters around the state. And in those chapters, you'll find people with resources to help you better understand your landscape, the plants that might fit into it. We also have on our site something called Garden Ambassadors, which are hyper-local garden guides, kind of. Somebody in the areas that we have a lot of them, they're great resources for why isn't this working? Why is that one failing? What, all the weird little questions that come up. Well, we're excited that this is going to be coming out soon.
Yeah, stay tuned to our website for more information. I'd like to thank Amory and Emerson for being my support group through this and helping give some context to the program. GBCLA and Ben and Fernanda, thank you guys for having us and letting us speak about our project. And of course, LADWP, our sponsor and the organization that made this possible and made it free for the people who want to take it for this first pilot program. So we thank them as well.
If there are no further questions, do we want to let everybody reclaim a couple minutes their day before the next class?
Yeah. All right, guys. There's my info if people need it. Thank you very much. Take care.
All right, stay safe out there.
Bye-bye.